This meeting is being recorded. Yay! It all worked out because the goddess is in charge. All right. Welcome, everybody. How does it get any better than that?
That was loaded with information. It all works out because the goddess is in charge.
Yes. Exactly.
Nothing like a good goddess in your business is my point of view.
That is absolutely correct. In your business, in your relationship, in your life, all of it.
In your bed.
In your bed, definitely. So hello, everybody. I'm Robin Vogel. Nice to see you in the Zoom. Nice to see you in the Facebook group. And this is Goddess Rising to the Summit. And I'm really happy to be here. This is really special this afternoon because we have a dear, dear teacher, friend, and colleague of mine, Rachael O'Brien. And it's so much fun to do it live. And it just fit. It was like, I'm thinking about Rachael. I really wanted you to participate. You have so much to offer and contribute to the world and to the summit. And I thought the best way to do this is to be in the room at the same time. So how does it get any better than that? And so I want to start by just naming again my intention with Goddess Rising to the Summit, which came to me in a very clear meditation, like a very clear download that this was the next step. And that this was that the purpose of it was to enrich and enliven and bring energy to me, to everybody participating, to all of our lives, to all of our businesses, to all of our relationships. And the specific purpose is to gain access and clear access to the divine feminine inside all of us, which has many definitions, because divine feminine, some people are like, huh? What does that mean? Which is certainly what I used to think, years ago. I had no idea what that meant. But to access the divine feminine, the goddess within, your intuition, your clarity, your inner wisdom, your guidance through consciousness, through the universe, and then to bring that out into the world in a tangible way. So I've invited these beautiful speakers to participate with us and to give us, offer us their version, their insight, and their specific tools that are really helpful with this journey of the goddess and the divine feminine rising in the world and being more present, which is so clear to me that that is what is needed right now. So Rachael O'Brien comes to us from all over the world, currently in London. She's a certified access facilitator. That is how we know each other. I've been learning and studying with Rachael for the last year and a half or so, and my life has completely changed, and I'm so happy to share her with you, with all of you, especially those of you that don't know her. So Rachael, when I asked you, let's tune in around about what your topic is, you immediately came back and said, now it doesn't mean it's the same, it could change in this moment, but what you said to you a couple of days ago was power and potency, and like no more nice girl. And girl we're using loosely because it's not about gender.
Good girl, good boy, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we just hopped on a minute ago, you had some interesting questions. So I'm just wondering what's showing up for you right now.
Well, I do want to start by saying something that we don't take into account the dynamic impact it can have as a woman, a goddess, is the role of the god, the male in that. So as a goddess, I always want to be, one of the tools of access consciousness is no exclusion, that we include, because for me, we'll talk a little bit about my story. It was quite an abusive childhood. And one of the things that has catapulted me to honor and respect of myself has been female and male, particularly in my case, male relationships, that have supported me from a kindness and caring that allowed me to, number one, recognize there is nothing wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with any of you on here. And number two, we deserve to live a life of freedom where we are not controlled by anyone's point of view, and our bodies by their very generation and creation, which we don't talk about enough, according to my point of view, know this freedom and are very energetically in communicating to us when we are in environments, in situations, in families, in circumstances, in jobs that do not support the exuberance of living and knowing that we actually can have choice as someone who chooses a body to live on our planet.
So many good things. And what's standing out for me in this moment is like, none of us is wrong. There's nothing wrong, which is such a big piece, because that's what really, in my opinion, or my point of view, that's what blocks us from accessing our inner goddess. And I'm going to use inner goddess, and I want everybody listening to translate to what works for them. So intuition, inner wisdom, alignment with self. Those are some. Consciousness, awareness. Those are some other words you can use. But the sort of habit of putting ourselves down, thinking we're not good enough is so, I mean, it's epidemic, right? I mean, that's the pandemic. And that's a block for, or I don't know, block, that's a tricky word there, but that's sort of a diversion, maybe I can say that, to our inner goddess. Yeah.
True story.
Yeah.
Can I pick up on that? So for those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Rachael O'Brien. I was born in the south of Ireland, a beautiful little city called Cork, 1972, to a very traditional Catholic Irish family. And my mother died 9 weeks ago. And so basically, thank you so much. Thanks so much. And so basically my mother was taken out of school at 13 years of age, and her mother showed up outside the classroom and told my mom, go get your bag. So my mother's like this 13-year-old, and she's like, okay, go get my bag. And her mom, who had like 17 children, 11 that survived, walks her to the local factory and says, go in there and ask for Mr. O'Mahony and tell her that you're Maggie McCarthy's daughter. So my mom goes in, and she doesn't realize she's been taken out of school, that she's been put into this factory to support the family to work.
Oh my gosh.
And this is only, remember, my mother was born in 1950. So this is not like, we're not talking about like hundreds of years ago. We're talking about how fast we are evolving right now. This is only 70 years ago, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So fast forward, she's this innocent, I refer to my mom as a fairy. And what I mean by that is I'm very like her. I'm much bigger physically, but she was blonde, big blue eyes, and a gentle spirit, but she became very hard. And but there was still the softness there, you know, and there was still that, you talk about the goddess strength, her power and her potency. When it was required, she could pull through. And so fast forward, she got into a violent relationship, met my dad, got married, and he nearly killed her. And she's left on her own with 2 babies, pregnant. One is me, and the other one is on the way. And 1972 in Ireland, first of all, if you were married, you weren't allowed an annulment or a divorce. Divorce only became legal in Ireland in 2004, 2003. Yeah, people don't realize.
Oh my goodness.
Abortion only came around maybe 7-8 years ago. So it was a very, the church and the government were intertwined, okay, which was historical of most cultural dominated religious countries. And so basically she was surprised as she got out of the relationship, and she started her journey doing her best to raise 2 little girls. So I was sexually abused by a Catholic priest, by my grandfather, and the abuse system continued on. Now, all this beauty shadowed by so many lies leaves so much residue of self-hatred. And that's really what I would invite you guys to look at, whether you're American, whether you're German, whether you're Irish, whether you're Puerto Rican, whether you're Australian, whether you're Filipino, whether you're Japanese, whether you're Russian. it shows itself in different variations, the lies of systemic abuse, systemic lack of caring. And so what occurs with this is that the norm becomes very twisted in a way that we buy into the way we should function. And when you are a powerful man and a powerful woman, first of all, it's something that's wrong and it's refused in your environment because you're the one that kicks back against the status quo.
Yes.
And which you know well.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I was considered a wild 16-year-old, didn't do what she was told, disturbed, disrupted, and really nobody ever bothered to ask what is this girl communicating, you know? And because number one, they didn't have the presence, number two, they didn't have the tools, and number three, they didn't have the consciousness or the wherewithal to support growth. Okay. And I would say that's probably everybody's story, Robin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some version of that for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That they grew up around. We talk a lot in Access about confusion is a created image, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much confusion about what you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to function, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to behave to fit into the system. So I would say that we were the first ones, my generation, 70s, born in the 70s, 60s, we were the first ones to really challenge the status quo, to go, hey, there's something not working here. There's something that requires to be addressed. And so for me, I would say I went into the shadow, which is I became an image. I took on a personality, good girl, get a good education, get a good job, marry a guy that I didn't know how to be supported by men because I had so much abuse. I was functioning from someone else's reality, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandparents, because there was so much. So number one, I didn't know how to receive. I didn't know how to receive caring, how to receive loving. I didn't know how to receive support. I didn't know how to have conversations in what I required because I was never asked what I required. And then fast forward, I have 3 children very quickly, even though I didn't want to have kids, but you get kids, you get married, that's what you do. And then I fell into a black depression in 2004, like out. And what occurred was I did 8 years of work that built my awareness, but it didn't include the body.
You didn't include your body. So much.
Yeah. And then 2012, my sister gave me a phone call, and I can only tell what worked for me in my life. I cannot ever tell anybody else what's going to work for them. I would not ever presume to be that. I can't take away anybody else's journey and the information that short circuits the old entrainment and leads them to something, a new version of themselves, you know. So for me, I started getting my bars run in 2012. This is an Access Consciousness therapy. You learn it. I immediately felt relaxed the first time I ran it. I got it run. And what started from getting my bars run, the first thing that occurred for me is, this is I'm laughing. I actually, when I got my bars run for the first time, I thought I was tired because I didn't know what relaxation felt like.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one. Yeah, that's the big one.
I was so used to it.
I still have to remind myself, like, oh, I'm not tired. I'm actually just relaxed.
Yeah. And so I'm laying on this table and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I have to go sleep. But what I didn't realize in that stage is no one had ever educated me on what is stress, what are the signs and signals to recognize it. No one ever said, you actually require to be the best version of you. You require support in the world. You require people that contribute you and lift you up and nurture you and don't judge you.
Right.
For growth, for expansion, particularly for growth, for expansion, for building self-trust.
And that's like exactly what the summit is for. I just want to interject that, because imagine a life where when you were born, that's what happened around you, you know, like everybody was there to lift you up and know that your voice was valuable and contribute to you and nourish you in all these different ways. That so now we're doing it now. Yeah.
And I do want to say, like, you've come in on a lot of the calls that are, some are educational and some are personal facilitation. And when we work in groups, the level of having people's back and the way that you see people's talents and the way you acknowledge their own inner knowing is something that is truly wondrous about you. It's, you'll always spot it. You'll always be like, hey, did you recognize this? Did you recognize this? Like, you said that. Do you remember you said that? And for me, that's a very natural recognition of a goddess, where they will, like, for me, I'm not interested. My standards for greatness is not leadership that does power over our force. My standard of greatness is a leader who stands by me and says, hey, I will empower you. I will gift you information that will allow you to make greater choices, so that you can question what you've bought as normal and is acceptable. And this is just the way that we do it, you know? So,
that was just a big contribution to me. Thank you. I mean, thank you for the appreciation, but also the awareness of the way people contribute. And that's a big part of stepping out and of aligning with the divine feminine, because that's divine feminine. You know, divine feminine versus the masculine energy, and not gender, again, just feminine aspect is flow and flexibility and community and connection and soft leadership, etc. So that's really that's the feminine aspect that I,
and also
yeah.
and also the part that's usually neglected is the capacity to kill stupidity, kill unkindness. I'm Irish, so I can go from a Bambi to a Banshee.
Oh, I like that.
I can be the gentlest stroke of dew, or, you know, a leaf on your back, or a cat's tail. And then I can kill you with a look if you are threatening or compressing or jeopardizing someone's reality who is super caring. And for me, I did have all the kind aspects, but the aspects I didn't have was what was kicked out of me when I was 7 years of age. There was someone that was like, wasn't treating my mom in the way that I thought she could be treated. And I kicked his legs with my little legs at 7 years of age. I kicked, get off my mom. And if I did, I was caught by the scruff of the neck and slapped very hard and put to bed. And so one of the things that I see with, I would say, everyone that I work with is, as a child, they saw something that didn't have to be in our world. And they were like, this is not okay. This should not be the way it is. And that potency, which is what this is what this whole day is about. A potency is to interact with a chemical so it alters its composition and becomes greater.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're bringing that up, because for me, the two sort of archetypes that come are, first of all, mama bear, just like mama bear, you know, will kill. Absolutely. And Kali, in the Hindu goddess tradition, right? Andrew's nodding his head because we're like Kali fans.
I love Kali.
Yeah, that's like Kali. It's like, cut that which doesn't serve. And that's kind. And it comes as a killing energy of like, I will not tolerate this, and this isn't needed here. This isn't required here. In fact, clear the path. So yeah, that's so important. Thank you for bringing that in, that piece of the divine feminine. Yeah.
And so to interact from a conclusion about what a someone who brings change to our world, who creates a greater future for humanity, which is let's be very clear, this is what this is all about. You know, we still live in a world. I was in Saudi a few weeks ago. We still live in a world where women wear hijabs, and they're ashamed for Rachael O'Brien after 3 days in a body workshop for them to see their faces. You know, like sometimes, because I'm an evolved Westerner, because we have the growth and information and education. Ireland changes its, everyone was entitled to college education in Ireland from 1989 on. So we changed our systems. So you had access to information, you'd access to education, which allows you to know that there are different choices available. And so one of the things that we can forget is that we still live in a world where there's mass control in regard to religion, systemic, culture, rules, regulations. And so we can very easily forget that still actually is in existence in our world, where people are really demanding change and choice. And one of the things for me is that when you see someone show up, the thing that blows my mind, Robin, is that if you have someone who is really willing to change their lives, whether they're Sudanese or Californian, there is nobody can stop them when they go, I am changing this. I will not live like this. This is not okay. And that is something that you cannot teach. That is something that is desired.
Yes, desired. And I'm thinking about the teaching aspect, or the inspiring maybe aspect of being able to sort of crawl out of circumstances similar to the ones that you described of your childhood. And for some people, it's like we have it inside us, sort of more accessible to crawl out and survive. And other people are still kind of finding their way out. And yeah, this is a big invitation to step out and rise up and come forward.
And, you know, a big piece too in becoming the leader that you are, and the greatness of what you can be in the world, and you talked to me recently about increasing your impact, is that sometimes I'll be like, oh, this work is hard, oh man, like I want to quit. And that'll just be like 10 seconds, genuinely. And then I'll have an image, or someone will call me and they'll say, hey, my whole life changed after the conversation that we had, or the class that I did with you. Because we're so looking for more, and we so know there's more. It's like when you know that amount of change, and one of the things that I see with you and every single person I meet, we know we couldn't keep going if we didn't know already in existence somewhere in our psyche that we can live in a world with ease, and that our bodies don't have to be subjected to force and control every day.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. Powerful statement. And yeah, that's a choice.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
It is that's the most difficult piece to get. That is the most difficult piece to get, because the one thing that I would love every single person in the world to know is that, number one, your point of view creates your reality. Because when I was 17 years of age, I came out of school, got on a boat and went to London. I was like, I'm getting away from these crazies. But because I was walking with the energetic vibration that I grew up with. Okay. I I was still emitting the same energies. I
Mhm.
didn't know how to teach people how to treat me. I was still a shadow of caring and nurturing. It was I was always kind, but I didn't have that kindness to myself, you know. So I came back to Ireland a couple of years later and stayed and fell into the old way of living, you know. But I couldn't change my life until I got that I had to have a different position from which I viewed myself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Which is a big invitation to step outside what's familiar. We've been talking about that a lot in the sex magic class, of stepping out of what's familiar, and all that requires, which is choice. And yeah, and a kind of a lot of awareness, because yeah, we just tend to, before we kind of wake up and get more conscious, we just think life is like that, whatever that is, you know, whatever that version is, whatever that energy is. It's familiar, it feels comfortable because it's familiar, even if it's not really truly us. It's, as you said, it's really somebody else's reality. Yeah, that was handed to us on a silver platter.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that we have to eat it.
Right, exactly. It's like we're eating it for a while and then we're like, oh, this doesn't even really taste good anymore. Like, I think I'm gonna close that box.
As we say in Ireland, it smells like shite. If it smells like shite, it is shite. And so what I would love to leave people with tonight is my favorite tool of all in Access Consciousness is interesting point of view. I have this point of view. And even if you've never heard of it before, okay, so interesting point of view, that I think I am the beliefs of Rachael O'Brien, the Irish girl, you know. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view that I can't be cared for in relationship. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view that I can't change or alter my life. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view that I cannot generate money on my own. I had a big one. I had that whopping one. Growing up Irish Catholic, where the men went to work and the women stayed at home and looked after the children. That's how I grew up. Okay, so you're hearing that all the time. Interesting point of view, I have this point of view that I cannot generate a business that will care for me, my body, my life. Interesting point of view, like, stop believing what you're thinking. That is only a projected reality. That is not true. Start to question. A belief is something you took on from someone else and something else. Start to question. If I was an infinite being with infinite choice, what is available to me that I haven't even began to consider? And this interesting point of view too, I'd love people to have a sense of what is possible. So I started this journey 10 years ago with commitment. Okay. And up until then, I always got guys that couldn't look after me, couldn't care for me, couldn't support me, ran away, you know, but I had to look at, there was something in common, me.
Right.
I was the common denominator. I mean, there's a time where you can't pop the finger out here, you know what I mean?
Always like, the hard pill to swallow. Yes.
Well, isn't it, because it's like this, what would you call it? An illustrator. Yeah, it's like an animation, okay? But it's, so Dr. Dane Hare, who's the co-founder of Access Consciousness, says, if you don't change an energy in this lifetime, you'll just have to change it in the next, you know? And so when I started to ask, so there is kind men in the world. Well, obviously I am blinded by the perceptions that I grew up in. What would that look like? And then fast forward, I meet Gary Douglas, I meet Dane Hare, and they talk to me about honor and trust and vulnerability. And they don't ever make me wrong, and they always support me. And then for me, it wasn't fast change. And it was, as in, I started to like myself because I hated myself. I look at photographs now when I was a young 20-year-old and 30-year-old, and I'm like, she was so beautiful. And yet I hated myself. And
Same.
so really, that to me is like, huh? You know,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
huh?
I know. Crazy. It's like, I know.
What? Like what? And so I started to like myself. And then I got my butt off the chair and I generated a business. And I really started that business 3 years ago. And so now I have a real firm support with really beautiful men that respect me, honor me, and support me in the generation of my life and my business.
Amazing.
And I have women as well that have total honor and caring and support and contribute in the growth of the work in the world. And so my point of view is both is required, because they're very a potent man that has the healing and caring and nurturing energies are very different to a potent woman. They're much calmer. Like if I'm doing like my crazy ma, I have a friend that will stand next to me and my whole reality will change when he's there, you know, because he's calmer, he's more relaxed. You know, from my point of view as men, humanoid healing men are far more relaxed than the women. They have like this space, whereas we tend to be like full on goddesses are like potent women, you know.
Yeah.
And when that energy is supported, and when men can be with that potency, we have way more access to what we are capable of generating, and they also do.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's so mind-blowing to watch receiving when you don't have a definition of who and what can contribute to your reality.
Yes, we talk a lot about allowance, and that's another key principle that I've learned in the access work, which we could do a whole day on allowance, but yes, to allowing yourself to be supported. And I love how you just sort of verified the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, how those energies really contribute to each other, contribute to the upliftment of each other, and the upliftment in general of, you know, energy that's contributing to the world and to all of us. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's so great. I could listen to you for the rest of the day and night, honestly. But the tool you mentioned, I just want to highlight that again. And I put it in the chat. And Edith, thank you for adding a link to Interesting Point of View. I have this point of view that has really been transformative and continues to be transformative in listening to what is around me and listening to the thoughts in my own head. And you said earlier, like, don't believe those thoughts, you know, it's just an interesting point of view. And I find myself saying that to myself often, you know, and in so many realms. And it's a practice that takes a while, because if you're hearing it for the first time, you're like, what, huh? Like, what does that mean? That's how I was when I first heard it. But as I continue to work with it and use the words, it started to seep in, and it gives me perspective, and it gives me neutrality, and it gives me the choice to let go of things that people want to put on me, their opinions or their feedback or whatever they call it. Just like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
Feedback. I don't like that word. It's just an interesting point of view, and that is interesting. So thanks everybody for being here, and thank you, Rachel, so much. I'm so appreciative of having you, the goddess. Yes. So many kisses. Exactly. Thank you, everybody who's here on the live. Both. I'm loving all the hearts that are coming. I'm going to add mine to it. And thank you, everybody who's listening on the Facebook group. We will see you there later today with more incredible good sessions and interviews to come. Thank you so much, Rachel. Mwah. Lots of love, everybody.
Yay! Bye. Have a great day. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.